Welcome to Church Without Walls. I'm John, and this is my partner, Poe. And today we're talking about the meaning of life through Paul McCartney and Garrett McNamara. The 100-Foot Wave and Sir Paul coming up after this. One of my wife, well, actually Peyton watches it too. So one of our favorite shows lately is a documentary on big wave surfers from HBO Max called 100-Foot Wave. And it kind of chronicles, it follows this eclectic group of extreme surfers. And kind of the grandfather of the whole thing is a guy named Garrett McNamara. And a lot of it takes place in Nazaré, Portugal, and some in Hawaii and California and so forth. But we were watching an episode this morning, and it showed Garrett and his wife kind of in their morning ritual where they have some time for meditation and then go about whatever they're going to do that day. And right as they stood up in the living room, Garrett's wife asked him, "What is your intention for today?" And his answer is what prompted our show today. His answer was to be loving. And it was an answer that I think should be the default answer, not only for every Christian, but for every human being, everyone who's motivated to be the true, the good, and the beautiful. So the meaning of life is a big question. I'm going to give you my perspective, which may not be true for you, or I hope it is, though, and we're going to talk about it through Jesus, Paul McCartney, and Garrett McNamara. So Jesus talked about love a lot. At one point, there was a passage where he was kind of rebuking his followers or his disciples for having a very narrow view of love. The idea that love's boundary is the bloodline. And Jesus made the statement, even the wicked love their own. You're not really impressing anyone. You're not really out there. You're not certainly divinely inspired by just loving your own. Of course, loving your own is a great thing. I love Peyton. I love Connor and Carter and my wife. But Jesus was saying this is not a supernatural love. That's a natural love. That's something that should happen. That should be the default. Even the wicked love their own, he says. Now, we know that there are examples in the world that people who don't love their own, right? And they're in the idea of Christ even less than the wicked, which is probably not a good place to be, right? To be less than the wicked, but if you don't even love your own. But his point really wasn't on that, on storge, on the natural love the Greeks called storge. His point was that we should love our neighbors, even though they're not blood related, that we should love strangers, that we should even love those who consider us enemies. We shouldn't consider anyone an enemy, but we know, having lived life longer than about 5 minutes, that there are people who consider us to be enemies, and we are to even love them. We're to pray for them. We're to be conscious. We're to be conscious of their needs and their walk. Tolstoy once remarked, if you feel pain, you are alive. If you feel other people's pain, you are a human being. So we're talking along those lines. Paul McCartney wrote a line, I think it was the last song the Beatles ever wrote, called The End, which is ironic, but he wrote a line that I think John sang actually, where he says, "And in the end," which is our prompt this morning, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. It rhymes. It's a couplet. Paul McCartney said he was trying to conjure up Shakespeare for that last line. I think Shakespeare could have done it a little better. I'm a big Beatles fan. Peyton will tell you I'm kind of obsessed at times. But I don't think that's true. I think people who are really lovers, people who really excel at loving, who have a great capacity to love, I don't think it equals out. I think the love they give is oftentimes many times greater than the love they receive. I think oftentimes the greatest of loves ends up being unrequited. This certainly is the relationship, if you understand a relationship between God and mankind, the father and the prodigal, or the self-righteous son in the field. Certainly the love the father gave was superior, was greater, if you want to measure that. And that's the funny thing. People who have a great capacity for love, they don't measure it. They don't weigh it. There's no tally that they're keeping. Well, X and Y did this, so I'll do this to X and Y. People who keep tallies like that, who try to equal what's out there, they don't really love. It's something else. It's some kind of competition. It's some kind of weird trap or cycle that they're involved in. Love is given freely, and it's given without exception and without even expectation of a return. Those are the lovers that I think the world stands back and says, wow. So I hate to start this by disagreeing with Sir Paul, and I think it's a quaint little couplet. It rhymes. I just don't think it's true. Hemingway wrote that the best people possess a feeling for beauty, the courage to take risks, the discipline to tell the truth, and the capacity for sacrifice. Ironically, their virtues make them vulnerable. They are often wounded, sometimes even destroyed. So I think Hemingway would also recognize that the capacity to be a great lover sometimes comes with great cost. And yet, when we talk about the meaning of life, I was thinking about this morning, and Poe didn't like the prompt. She thought it was too dark. I was thinking, when we do, whenever that time is, if we have the blessing to actually lay on a deathbed and death doesn't take us by surprise, if we actually have that blessing where we're able to think back over the life we've lived, I think those connections that we've made through love are going to be at the forefront of our mind. The love that has gone on before us by, people who have departed and left our experience before we have left, and those we're leaving behind. And certainly with those who've left this world for me, or whether I think of my son or my mother, my father, or the sister I never met, for those who passed away prior to my own expiration date, I think of terms in love. I think of the love I gave and the love I wish I would have given more of. You know, it's life has that way of focusing on the important when something as extreme as separation enters. You know. So, meaning of life, and this is not a Christian thing, this is kind of a worldwide thing. It's recognized in many religions, even in many philosophies. The real meaning of life is found in those relationships that we experience. Not in the experiences we have as much as, there's people who've had incredible lives with experiences that we can't even fathom. And on their deathbed, I just don't think that takes precedence. And yet, in our relationships, whether it be a parental relationship or a sibling relationship or just a relationship between friends, we have many opportunities to create meaning, most of the time through love and affection. Even a mentor-student relationship is one of love and affection. You want the better for the other person. And the patient mentor and the grateful student resonate with love. There's a love there. There's a respect. There's a certain honor in the relationship. There's a sacred nature to it. And certainly, those relationships can happen within a family structure as well. I mean, an older brother can be a mentor or even a student to a sibling, and that appreciation can be there. I know Wendy. Peyton's only got a week left in school, and she just wrote her teachers. She's been blessed in this, her first year of public school, to have really outstanding teachers she really loves and respects. And she wrote thank you letters to each of them and sealed them in wax, and it was very fancy, very nice. Made her own cards. And she's experienced, probably for the first time outside of her relationship with her brother and her parents, this wonder, this magic to have a relationship with an adult that is mentor student, and she appreciates it. She's grateful for the time and the education she's received from each of these teachers, who are all different in personality and approach, but she's had this wonderful. Am I speaking for you? You want to jump in here? Huh?
Well,
I mean, I'm talking about the mentor-student relationship. Who knows that better than you right now?
well,
Plus,
all my teachers are like really good and really inspirational and really have taught me a lot, and I'm really like grateful. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's probably something you're never going to forget. I know there are students who go back. I've got some friends who are teachers, and I think it's really a spark of the divine when they see a student who they mentored 12 years or even 20 years before return to the classroom because of the 1 year they spent together and how influential that was on life decisions and so forth. So what's this about? This is the one takeaway from today's message. And it's something that really struck me hard when it finally did hit me. It might seem so simple to you. You might think, how could you have been a pastor, for 20 years and not realize this? I did, in and out. It just didn't hold the priority that it does with me today. And that is this. If your relationship to your faith isn't making you a better lover, there's something wrong with your faith. Now, I'm not saying don't be a Christian. I'm not saying, because there's many varieties of Christianity, and some are a lot more loving than others. It's just true. Some traditions, some corners of the tent are effusive with love, and some you could barely find love with a magnifying glass, right? So, but what I'm saying to you, and you know this deep in your heart, you know, if growing up in your tradition, did you feel love? Did you feel that kind of acceptance, that kind of feeling that those around you wanted the best for you? They, and in their relationship to you, did you feel that kind of an unconditional love? That kind of support, that kind of encouragement in the relationships? So I'm asking you, do the math on this. Weigh your belief system. And it's bigger even than your spiritual journey. It might be your political mindset. Does your political mindset make you a better lover? Does it allow you to live up to even the prompts in your own holy book? You know, the Bible in both testaments talks about how we're to love our neighbor, how we're to love the stranger who's coming into our own land. You know, the whole argument over immigration, we think it's a political issue, but if you read the Bible, and if you're a Christian, you'll see how many times in the Old Testament the Jew was told, you know, leave the corners of your field unharvested for the stranger wandering through your land. Greet him as if he's a family member. Take him in, take care of him. Because remember, you were slaves in a far country at one point, sojourning through strange lands to get home. The same is true in the New Testament, in the words of Jesus. Does your faith, does your political mindset allow you to love in that way? Wendy brought up to me the other day how fascinated she has been by standing away from the faith she was like brought up in, and just looking at some of the truth in the Bible and in other Christian traditions, and seeing how much it makes sense, because it's talking about loving the oppressed, not the powerful, not bowing to the powerful, but sticking up for the oppressed, whether it was the leper or the Samaritan, you know, or the goyim, the non-Jew, the stranger passing through. In the time of Christ, it would be the women of ill repute, or tax collectors, or people considered traitors, and so forth. Jesus did make a point out of saying, yeah, we're to love them too, even them. And this is what was revolutionary, not just about Christ, but about early Christianity. And so here's the big question. Does what you believe, does what you subscribe to make you a better lover? Does it make you a better father, a better husband, a better employer or employee? Does it make you a better neighbor? Does it make you, inspire you to even be a better enemy? To think about people who despise you in ways where you bring them in front of God and you don't ask for a piano to drop on their head, but you ask for reconciliation. You hope for the best for them. And if your faith or worldview or political view isn't creating that kind of an atmosphere in your life, then you have already weighed it and found it wanting. You already know that it's not God's will. Whether it comes with a Christian label or a Buddhist label or a Republican label or a Democrat label, whatever it comes in, you need to make a change, because life is short and life is fragile and it's fleeting, and the end will be here before we know it. And how much of our life then will be chaff and stubble and not something what kind of legacy are we going to leave to our children in our example of when we've loved sacrificially, when they've seen us in the face of adversity do something otherworldly, like love like Jesus loved, or forgive. That's all I got.
I'm just adding finishing touches.
Well, let's see those finishing touches, because that's all I got. And it doesn't get any better than that.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I'm going to go to this screen. So, it looks like you're drawing two faces facing each other. You want to talk about it?
Sure. So on this side, you see a man, and he's looking into a mirror.
Do you want to hold it up a little bit?
Fine, but I wasn't done. I guess this could be done.
Well, I thought it was a man looking at a woman, but
No,
you're telling me it's a mirror.
he's looking into the mirror, and he's looking at himself, but he's looking at himself as a drag queen.
Interesting.
So he's looking at what he really feels like.
That's what he feels like.
Mm-hmm.
What prompted that this morning?
I don't know.
Okay. Interesting, Poe. Thanks for sharing.
I also just wanted to work on side profiles, so yeah.
That's one way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd be an ugly drag queen because I'm not willing to shave my beard. And I don't know, bearded ladies.
You just
have
have to
never
put
been.
some glitter in it
Glitter?
and dye it a color.
Okay, folks. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next week.